The ship moved through the darkness, between stars like a silver needle. Through black cloth, inside Ambassador Keth of the Sarai stood at the viewing window and watched the lights of distant suns pass by. She had traveled across the galaxy many times in her 300 years of life. She had seen wonders that would make younger beings weep with joy, but today she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt afraid. The message had come to her 7 days ago. It arrived on her private channel, encrypted with codes that only the highest members of the Concord of 12 could use. The message was simple. It contained only coordinates and a single word, come. The coordinates pointed to Omnith Prime, the ancient world where the galactic archives were kept. Kevin had visited the archives many times before. She had studied the histories of 1,000 species there. She had read about wars that burned across entire star systems and peace treaties that lasted for 10,000 years. The archives held the memory of the galaxy itself, but she had never been summoned like this. She had never been called in secret. Her ship slowed as it approached Omnith Prime. The planet hung in space like a gray pearl, its surface covered with the silver domes of the archive buildings. No one lived on Omnith Prime except the keepers, the ancient machines that maintained the records. The planet existed for one purpose only, to remember. Kevin landed her ship on a platform near the central archive. Air outside was thin and cold, but her suit kept her warm. As she walked toward the entrance, the doors were tall, made of a metal that had not been manufactured for 50,000 years. They opened as she approached, recognizing her genetic signature. Inside, the archive stretched away into darkness. Rows of data crystals lined the walls, each one containing more information than 1,000 libraries. Floating lights followed Kathleen as she walked, lighting her path through the maze of knowledge. She walked for a long time. The archive was larger than most cities, and the section she needed was deep inside, in a part of the building that few beings ever visited. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Finally she reached a door. It was smaller than the others, made of simple gray metal. There were no markings on it, no signs to tell visitors what lay inside, but Kethvon knew this was the place. Her hands trembled slightly as she pressed them against the surface. The door did not open. A voice spoke from the walls around her. It was the voice of the archive itself, ancient and without emotion. This section is sealed by order of the first founders. Access requires authorization from the Concord Council. Keith Van pulled a small crystal from her pocket. It glowed with a soft blue light. I have authorization, she said. Council override code 773. There was a long pause. Keith V. Van could almost feel the archive thinking, searching through its ancient protocols. Then the voice spoke again. Authorization accepted. Warning: the contents of this section have been classified as dangerous to galactic stability. Do you wish to proceed? Kevin took a deep breath. Yes. The door slid open. The room inside was small and dark. A single pedestal stood in the center, holding a data crystal that was different from all the others Catherine had seen. This crystal was black, so dark that it seemed to swallow the light around it. She walked toward it. Slowly, her heart's beating fast in her chest. She reached out and touched the crystal. Information flooded into her mind. Images, sounds, records, and memories poured through her consciousness like a river breaking. Through a dam, she saw stars she did not recognize. She saw ships of designs that existed in no database. She saw beings, strange, soft-skinned beings with two arms and two legs and eyes that held emotions she could not name, and she saw a word, a name, a species, humanity. Keith Van pulled her hand back from the crystal. She was breathing hard now, her body shaking. This was impossible. The Concord of 12 had existed for over 100,000 years. Every space-faring species in the galaxy was a member. There were no others. There could not be others, but the records were clear. There had been a 13th species, a species that had discovered faster than light travel 87,000 years ago, a species that had made contact with the founders themselves, a species that had been erased. Keith Van touched the crystal again, more carefully. This time she let the information flow into her mind. More slowly, studying each piece as it came, she saw the early records first. The first detection of human radio signals, the first probe sent to study their world, the first careful plans for contact. The humans had lived on a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star. The planet was called Earth, and it was located in an outer arm of the galaxy, far from the great civilizations of the core worlds. The humans had been alone for their entire history, developing slowly, fighting wars among themselves, dreaming of the stars. When they finally reached those stars, they had been full of hope. The records showed their first ships, clumsy, primitive things that barely worked. But the humans had not cared about their ships' limitations. They had cared only about exploring, about discovering, about meeting whoever else might be out there in the darkness, and they had found the Concord. Keith Van watched the records of first contact. She saw human ambassadors meeting with the founders, their faces full of wonder and joy. She saw gifts being exchanged, human art and music traded for star maps and technology. She saw the beginning of what should have been a beautiful friendship between species, but something had gone wrong. The records became darker as KTH Van continued to read. She saw warnings being sent. She saw emergency meetings being held. She saw fear spreading through the Concord like a disease. And then she saw why the images that followed would stay with Keth for the rest of her life. She saw human colonies burning. She saw children dying in the vacuum of space. She saw 17 billion lives ended in 6 months by the KTH Mary Dominion, a species that had believed the young humans would be easy prey. The KTH Mary had been wrong. Kevin watched what happened next with growing horror. She saw humanity change. She saw their joy turn to grief, and their grief turned to something else, something cold and hard and terrible. She saw them rebuild their ships. She saw them study their enemies' weapons and make them better. She saw them create new technologies that should have taken thousands of years to develop, and then she saw them go to war. The human counterattack was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. They did not fight the way other species fought. They did not seek surrender or negotiation. They did not stop when they had won. They kept going, they kept pushing, they kept destroying until there was nothing left to destroy. The Kethari Dominion had ruled 400 worlds. They had conquered dozens of species. They had existed for 2 million years. The humans wiped them out in 18 months. Not defeated, not conquered, wiped out. Every ship, every colony, every world, every single member of the Kethmari species was killed. The humans erased them from the galaxy as completely as if they had never existed. And when it was over, the humans did not celebrate, they did not mourn. They simply looked up at the stars with eyes that had changed forever, and they began to prepare for the next war. Cathan pulled her hand from the crystal. She could not read anymore. Her mind was overwhelmed, her emotions in chaos. She had seen genocides before in the archives. She had studied the great wars of galactic history, but she had never seen anything like this. The humans had not just won a war, they had become something new, something that terrified even the ancient founders who had seen civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. She touched the crystal one more time. She needed to know the rest. She needed to understand why the humans had been erased from history, why their world had been sealed away, why the galaxy had chosen to forget them. The final records were different from the others. They were not official documents or military reports. They were personal messages, private thoughts recorded by the founders themselves. Kevin read them with a growing sense of dread. We have made a terrible mistake, one founder wrote. We welcomed these humans as friends. We thought they were like us, curious and peaceful, seeking only knowledge and connection. We were wrong. They are something we have never encountered before. When other species are wounded, they heal. When humans are wounded, they become the wound itself. Another founder was more direct. They must be stopped, not because they are evil. They are not evil. They have art and love and kindness just as we do, but they have no limits. When they are pushed, they push back without end. They do not understand the concept of enough. They will keep fighting until there is nothing left to fight, and then they will find something else to fight. They are a species without a ceiling. The final message was the one that chilled Keth Van to her core. It was written by a being named Oran the Shepherd, the oldest and wisest of the founders. His words were simple and sad. We have decided what must be done. We cannot destroy the humans. We are not certain we could succeed, and the attempt might make them even more dangerous. We cannot negotiate with them. They no longer trust anyone beyond their own kind. So we will do the only thing we can do. We will make them forget. We will seal their system behind barriers they cannot cross. We will erase their memories of the stars. We will remove all record of their existence from the archives, and we will watch them always to make sure they never remember what they did. This is not justice. This is not kindness. This is fear. We are afraid of what they became, and we are even more afraid of what they might become if they are ever heard again. The galaxy has seen many horrors, but it has never seen anything like humanity awakened. We must make sure it never does again. Do not wake them. Do not remind them. They must never remember what they are. Kevin stood alone in the dark room for a long time. The crystal's glow had faded. Its secrets revealed at last. She understood now why she had been summoned. She understood why this information had been sealed for 87,000 years. But she did not understand why the seal had been broken. Now she left the archive room and walked back through the endless halls of data crystals. Her mind was full of questions. Who had sent her the summons? Why had they wanted her to know the truth about humanity? And what did they expect her to do with this knowledge? As She reached the exit, she found her. Answer, a figure stood waiting for her. Near the great doors, it was tall and thin, wrapped in robes that shimmered. Like starlight, its face was hidden, but its voice was ancient and tired. You have seen the records, the figure said. It was not a question. Keith Van nodded. Who are you? I'm a keeper. We are the ones who watch. We have watched for 87,000 years, monitoring the sealed world, making sure the humans never remember. Why did you summon me? Why did you want me to know? The keeper was silent for a moment. When it spoke again, its voice was heavy with something that might have been sorrow. Because we have failed. 7 days ago, human probe crossed the barrier. It was small, primitive, built with technology they developed on their own after we erased their memories. They have spent 87,000 years climbing back to the stars. We slowed them. We did not stop them. Kevin felt her blood run cold. What are you saying? I am saying that the humans have found their way back to space. They will soon discover that they are not alone in the galaxy, and when they do, they will have questions about their history, questions about why they have no memory of the stars they once traveled, questions we cannot answer. Keith Vivon whispered, questions that might make them remember. Keeper stepped closer and Kevin could see the fear in its ancient eyes. 87,000 years ago, humanity lost 17 billion of their people and became something that destroyed an entire species. Today they have 8 billion people on their home world alone. They have changed in ways we do not understand. They have built philosophies and religions and arts that we have never seen before. They have become something new, something better. Kethvon asked, hoping. The keeper did not answer immediately. When it did, the words were careful and slow. We do not know. That is why we have summoned you, ambassador. You are known throughout the conquered as a diplomat, a peacemaker, a bridge between species. You have ended wars and built alliances that lasted for centuries. You want me to make contact with them. We want you to find out what they have become. We want you to discover whether the humans of today are the same as the humans of 87,000 years ago, and if they are. The keeper paused. If they are, then the conquered must prepare for what is coming. The galaxy thought it was safe. The galaxy believed that the monsters of the past were gone forever, but monsters do not stay forgotten. They wake up, and when they do, they remember. Kevva looked up at the stars through the great glass ceiling of the archive. Somewhere out there in a tiny corner of the galaxy, a species was waking up. A species that had once burned the stars with its rage. A species that the entire galaxy had chosen to forget, but forgetting did not make something disappear. It only made the return more terrible. She made her decision. Tell me everything, she said to the keeper. Tell me everything about the humans, their world, their culture, their history since the forgetting. I will need to understand them if I am going to speak with them. The keeper nodded slowly. There is much to tell. They are a strange species, ambassador. In the time since we sealed them away, they have done terrible things to each other, wars, cruelty, destruction, but they have also done beautiful things. They have created art that moves even us. Ancient keepers, they have built societies dedicated to justice and kindness. They have struggled always to be better than they were. Then perhaps there is hope. Perhaps. The keeper's voice was tired, but remember the words of Auror and the shepherd. the humans did not destroy the KTH because they were evil. They destroyed them because they were hurt. Goodness and destruction are not opposites in the human soul. They live side by side, and the wall between them is thinner than we can imagine. Kevin turned away from the stars and began walking back to her ship. She had a long journey ahead of her, a journey to a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star. Journey to meet a species that the galaxy had tried to forget, a journey that might decide the fate of every living being in the universe. Behind her, the keeper watched her go, and in the silence of the archive, surrounded by the memories of a H100 red 000 years, it spoke one final warning that Keth Van did not hear. Be careful, Ambassador. The humans are not what they seem. They are never what they seem, and when you think you understand them, that is when they are most dangerous of all. The stars burned on in the endless dark, keeping their secrets, and on a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy, 8 billion humans looked up at the night sky, dreaming of wonders they could not remember, but deep in their blood, deep in their bones, deep in the ancient parts of their minds that no forgetting could touch, something was beginning to stir, something that remembered, something that had been waiting for 87,000 years to wake up. 87,000 years before Ambassador Kev Va opened the sealed records. The galaxy was a different place. The Concord of 12 was young then, only 10,000 years old, still growing and learning. The founders who had created it were still alive, guiding the alliance with wisdom gained across millions of years. In those days, the galaxy was full of hope. The first human ship to leave its home system was called the Wanderer. It was a small vessel, barely capable of traveling faster than light, held together with technology that the older species would have called primitive, but the humans who built it did not care about its limitations. They cared only about the dream it represented. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Wanderer as it prepared to make its first jump. She was 43 years old, with gray streaks in her dark hair and lines around her eyes from years of looking at stars through telescope lenses. She had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. All systems ready, her navigator reported. Jump drive charged and stable. Elena nodded around her. The crew was silent. They all understood what this moment meant for all of human history. They had been alone. They had looked up at the night sky and wondered if anyone else was out there watching the same stars, dreaming the same dreams. Today they would find out. Engage, Elena said. The Wanderer jumped. The journey took 3 days. When the ship emerged from faster than light travel, it found itself in a system that no human had ever visited. There were 6 planets orbiting a red star, and on the 4th planet there were light cities, signs of life. Elena felt tears running down her face. They were not alone. They had never been alone. We're receiving a transmission, her communications officer said, her voice shaking. It's a greeting. They're welcoming us. The Sirathi were the first species that humanity met. They were tall and graceful, with silver skin and large dark eyes that seemed to hold all the sorrow and joy in the universe. They had been watching humanity for centuries, waiting for the day when these strange, passionate beings would finally reach the stars. That first meeting was everything Elena had dreamed it would be. The Sarai were kind and patient, answering the humans' Endless questions with gentle humor. They told the humans about the conquered. Of 12, the great alliance that united the space-faring species of the galaxy. They told them about the founders, the ancient beings who had guided civilization for millions of years. They told them about the wonders that waited among the stars, and the humans listened with hearts full of joy. Within a year, humanity had established contact with all 12 species of the conquered. Human ambassadors traveled to distant worlds, learning new languages and customs. Human scientists studied technologies that seemed like magic. Human artists shared their music and paintings and stories with beings who had never imagined such things. It was, everyone agreed, the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Human colonies began to spread across the stars. The first was established on a world called New Eden, a green planet with 2 moons that reminded the settlers of Earth. Then came New Shanghai, New Logos, New Sydney, a dozen worlds, then 2 dozen, then 50. Humanity grew like wild flowers in spring, spreading wherever there was room to grow. The colonies were full of children, human children playing in the streets of cities that orbited alien suns, human children learning languages that had existed for millions of years, human children looking up at skies that held different stars than the ones their grandparents had known. 17 billion humans lived in the colonies by the time the Cathmary came. The Cathmar Dominion was not a member of the conquered. They were an old species, older than most, and they had chosen their own path long ago. They conquered, they enslaved, they destroyed. The conquered had fought wars against them before, but the HFY were powerful and their territory was far from the core worlds. No one expected them to attack humanity. Later, historians would try to understand why the Cathmary did what they did. Some said they feared humanity's rapid growth. Some said they wanted to test the conquered's commitment to its newest member. Some said they simply saw weakness and struck, as they had always done. The reason did not matter. What mattered was what happened. The first attack came without warning. A Keith Mari fleet appeared in the skies above New Eden and opened fire. The colony had no defenses. Humanity had not built warships yet. They had not thought they needed them. The HFY killed 3 billion people in the first hour. They did not just kill quickly, they killed slowly. They killed families. They killed children. They broadcast the deaths across all channels so that every human in the galaxy could watch. They wanted humanity to see. They wanted humanity to understand that there was no hope, no mercy, no salvation on Earth. People watched their children die. Elena Vasquez was old now, retired from space travel, living in a small house by the ocean. She watched the broadcasts with the rest of humanity. She saw the cities she had helped build burning in the night. She saw the faces of people she had known, people she had loved, twisted in agony as they died, and she felt something change inside her, not just inside her, inside all of humanity. The conquered sent messages of sympathy. They promised that the HFY would be punished. They spoke of diplomacy and sanctions and the slow wheels of galactic justice. Humanity did not listen. In the weeks after the first attack, something happened that the galaxy had never seen before. Humanity stopped fighting among themselves. Every nation, every faction, every group that had ever been divided by politics or religion or history, they all came. Together, they stopped being separate peoples and became one people, united by a grief so vast that it burned away everything else, and then they got to work. The Sarathi ambassador to Earth, gentle being named Kelith, watched what happened next with growing unease. He saw human scientists working without sleep, driven by something beyond me. Dedication. He saw human engineers building things that should have taken decades to design. He saw human soldiers training with a focus that seemed almost mechanical. What are you doing? Kelith asked the human leader, a woman named Director Chen. Director Chen looked at him with eyes that had not slept in days. We are preparing, she said. Preparing for what? For war. The conquered will handle the KTH Mary. You do not need to. The conquered did not protect our children. Director Chen's voice was calm, but there was something underneath it that made Kelith step backward. The conquered watched while billions of our people died, so we will handle the Keth Mary ourselves. You do not have the technology. You do not have the ships. The Keith Mari have been waging war for 2 million years. Director Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. They have never fought us. Kelith reported his concerns to the founders. They listened carefully and they agreed that the humans should be watched, but they did not interfere. Humanity was grieving, they said. Let them grieve. Let them build their little ships and train their little soldiers. It would give them something to do. While the conquered prepared its response, they did not understand what they were watching. In 3 years, humanity went from having no warships to having the most advanced military fleet in the galaxy. The older species had spent millions of years developing their technology, slowly, carefully building on the work of previous generations. Humanity did not have millions of years. They had rage and grief and a burning need to make someone pay for what had been done to their children. They captured Cathmary weapons and figured out how they worked in days. They improved those weapons and made them more powerful. They invented new technologies that the other species had never imagined. Weapons that could tear through shields like paper, drives that could cross the galaxy in hours, sensors that could find enemies hiding in the darkest corners of space, and when they were ready, they launched their attack. The human fleet was smaller than the KTH Mary fleet. It was newer, less experienced, crewed by soldiers who had never fought a battle by every measure that the galaxy used to judge military strength. Humanity should have lost. They did not lose. The first battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 40 Keith Murray warships were destroyed. The human losses were 3 ships. The KTH Mary could not understand what was happening. They fought the way they had always fought, with overwhelming force, with cruel tactics designed to break their enemy's will. These strategies had worked against dozens of species for 2 million years. Against humanity, they did not work. The humans did not break. They did not surrender. They did not negotiate. They pushed forward, always forward, with a determination that seemed inhuman. When their ships were damaged, they kept fighting. When their soldiers died, others took their places without hesitation. When the Cathmary tried to retreat, the humans followed. The founders watched the war with growing alarm. They had expected a human defeat, or perhaps a stalemate that would require conquered intervention. They had not expected this. They are not fighting Like any species we have seen, one founder reported they do not seek victory in the traditional sense. They seek annihilation. They will not stop until the Keith Mary are completely destroyed. Surely they will accept a surrender. Another founder said no. The Keith Mary tried to surrender on the 7th day of the war. The humans ignored them. They continued their attack as if no offer had been made. This is madness. We must intervene. We cannot. The humans have made it clear that any ship that interferes with their war will be treated as an enemy, and I do not believe they are bluffing. The war lasted 18 months. In that time, humanity destroyed everything the HFY had built over 2 million years of existence. They burned their worlds. They killed their soldiers. They hunted down their civilians and ended them. Without mercy, they erased the HFY from the galaxy as completely as if they had never existed. When it was over, not a single member of the HFY species remained alive. The humans had committed genocide. The galaxy was silent in the aftermath. No one knew what to say. HFY had been cruel. Yes, they had started the war. They had killed billions of innocents. But what the humans had done in response, it was beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Director Chen stood before the conquered council after the war ended. She was older now, her hair completely gray, her face marked by the years of conflict. She spoke calmly without emotion. The HFY killed our children, she said. They made us watch. They laughed while our families died. And you, she looked at the founders with eyes that held no respect, no awe, only cold judgment. You did nothing. You sent your messages and made your promises and waited for us to accept our fate. We would have helped, one founder protested. We were preparing. You were too slow. You did not understand what we needed, so we helped ourselves. Director Chen turned to leave, then stopped. We will not forget what happened. We will never forget. And if anyone ever threatens our people again, we will do the same thing. There is no force in this galaxy that can stop us. Remember that. She walked out of the council chamber. The founders sat in silence, trying to process what they had witnessed. Finally, the oldest founder spoke. His name was Aun, and he had guided civilizations for 5 million years. His voice was quiet, almost sad. We have made a terrible mistake, he said. We thought we were welcoming a new species into the family of the galaxy. We were wrong. We have welcomed something else entirely. What do you mean? I have seen many species in my time. I have watched them grow and change and sometimes destroy themselves. But I have never seen anything like humanity. When we are wounded, we heal. When we are hurt, we recover. That is the nature of life. To endure, to survive, to continue. Oren paused, and when he spoke again, his words carried the weight of ancient wisdom and fresh fear. Humanity does not heal when wounded. They do not recover. They transform. They become the wound itself. And they make the universe share their pain. The HFY hurt them, and in response, the humans did not just defeat their enemy. They erased them. They made it so that the HFY never existed. What should we do? Aun looked at the stars beyond the council chamber. Windows. Somewhere out there, humanity was returning to their worlds. Their grief satisfied for now. They had lost 17 billion people. They had killed hundreds of billions in revenge. The mathematics of their pain was beyond any equation the galaxy had ever calculated. I do not know, Aun said at last, but I know this, we cannot allow them to be heard again, because if something else threatens them the way the Cathmari did, they will not stop at one species, they will burn the entire galaxy to keep themselves safe, and I am not certain we could stop them. You sound afraid. I'm afraid. Aun closed his eyes for the first time in 5,000,000 years. I am truly afraid. We have seen the future of the galaxy, my friends, and it wears a human face. The council dispersed, each founder returning to their own thoughts and fears. In the weeks that followed, they watched humanity carefully. The humans returned to their colonies, began rebuilding, began having children again. They seemed peaceful, they seemed normal, but the founders knew the truth. Beneath the surface, beneath the smiles and the laughter and the ordinary lives, something had changed in humanity. Forever, the wound the HFY had inflicted had not healed, it had transformed into something else. Capacity for destruction that slept quietly but never truly disappeared. The humans had become something new, something the galaxy had never seen before, and the founders knew they had to do something about it. But what? That was the question that would haunt them for months to come. How do you protect the galaxy from a species that you cannot defeat, cannot contain, cannot negotiate with? How do you stop a storm that only appears when provoked but destroys everything in its path when it arrives? Un spent many nights alone, thinking about the problem. He walked through the gardens of his ancient world, looking up at the stars that he had watched for millions of years, and slowly a plan began to form in his mind. It was not a good plan, it was not a kind plan, it was born from fear and desperation and the knowledge that there were no good options, but it was the only plan that might work. He would propose it to the council soon. They would argue, they would debate, they would resist, but in the end they would agree, because they would see what Euron saw, a future where humanity remembered what they could become and chose to become it again. That future could not be allowed to happen, whatever the cost. Humanity had to forget. The council chamber was silent as Oren finished speaking. The other founders sat in their ancient seats, their faces showing various shades of shock, disbelief, and fear. What Oren had proposed was unlike anything they had ever considered. It went against everything they believed about freedom, about the rights of sentient beings, about the sacred nature of memory itself. But none of them could say he was wrong. You are suggesting we erase their minds, Calora of the Vinth said at last. Her voice was soft, almost broken. You want us to take away their memories of the stars, to trap them on their home world, to cage them? Yes, Oren said simply. That is monstrous. Yes, Oren did not look away from her eyes. It is monstrous, but so is the alternative. You saw what they did to the HFY. You saw how quickly they learn to kill if we do nothing. And if they are ever hurt again, we could protect them. Another founder suggested we could ensure that no one attacks them. For how long? 10,000 years, or 100,000, a million? Oren shook his head. We cannot guarantee their safety forever. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Eventually something will threaten them, and when it does, they will respond the way they responded to the HFY. They will burn everything around them until they feel safe again. Perhaps they will change. Perhaps they will learn. They will not change. We're on an LT Unk and GT's voice was heavy with certainty. I have studied them carefully. In the months since the war, I have read their histories, their literature, their ancient stories. This capacity for destruction is not new. It has always been part of them throughout their history. Whenever they have been truly threatened, they have responded with overwhelming force. They call it different things: justice, vengeance, protection, but the result is always the same: total victory, complete destruction of their enemies, no mercy, no limits, no end until the threat is eliminated. Then what you are proposing, it would not just be punishment, it would be protection for them and for us. Yes, Elm closed his eyes. I do not like this plan. I have guided civilizations for 5 million years, and I have never done anything like what I am suggesting now. But I see no other option. Humanity is not evil. They have goodness in them. More goodness than many species I have known, but they also have something else, something that cannot be controlled or negotiated with, something that sleeps quietly until it is awakened, and you believe that making them forget will keep it sleeping. I believe it is our best chance. If they do not remember the stars, they will not feel threatened by the galaxy. If they do not remember what they lost, they will not seek revenge. If they do not remember what they did, they will not know what they are capable of. The council debated for many days. Some founders argued that Aun's plan was too extreme, that it violated the fundamental principles on which they conquered had been built. Others argued that it did not go far enough, that humanity should be destroyed entirely before they could threaten the galaxy again. But in the end they reached a decision. The plan would go forward. They called it the Great Forgetting. Preparations took several years. Technology required was ancient, developed millions of years ago by a species that had long since disappeared. It had been used only once before to save a world from a collective madness that had nearly destroyed it. No one had ever attempted to use it on an entire space-faring civilization. UN worked tirelessly, adapting the technology to work on human minds. It was delicate work. Human consciousness was different from other species, more complex in some ways, more fragile in others. The memory wipe had to be precise. It had to remove all knowledge of the stars, all memory of the colonies, all awareness of the greater galaxy, but it had to leave everything else intact. While Yuru worked on the technology, others worked on the logistics. Human ships had to be recalled without raising suspicion. Human colonies had to be quietly evacuated. Human records had to be erased from every database in the galaxy, and a barrier had to be built around the human home system, a wall of quantum energy that would keep them contained without them knowing they were contained. The hardest part was the deception. Humanity still trusted the conquered. Despite the failures during the Cathmary War, they still believed that the older species were their friends and allies. They did not know that their friends were planning to cage them. Founders told humanity that a new threat had been detected, a danger that required the evacuation of all human colonies. The humans were suspicious at first, but the evidence was convincing. False readings, manufactured sensor data, fake transmissions from imaginary enemies. The humans believed what they were told because they wanted to believe it. They wanted to think that the galaxy was still the friendly place they had Imagine when they first reached the stars, one by one the human colonies were abandoned. The settlers returned to Earth, crowding into cities that were not prepared for so many people. The human government protested, demanded answers, threatened to investigate, but the evacuation was already complete before they could act. And then came the forgetting. Yuru stood alone in his chamber as the moment approached. He had built the device that would erase humanity's memories. He had designed every part of it, tested every component, ensured that it would work exactly as planned. But now, with the activation only moments away, he felt something he had not felt in millions of years. Doubt. Am I doing the right thing? He asked the empty room. There was no answer. He thought about the humans he had met over the years. He remembered their joy when they first encountered the stars. He remembered their curiosity, their creativity, their passion for life. He remembered the way they laughed and loved and dreamed of things that seemed impossible. And he remembered what they had become when their children died. He remembered the cold efficiency of their war against the KTH Mary. He remembered the look in Director Chen's eyes when she spoke to the council, the absolute certainty that she was right, that her people were right, that nothing else mattered. Both of those things were true. Both of those things were humanity. I am sorry, Oren whispered to no one. I am so sorry. He activated the device. The effect was not immediate. The technology worked slowly, spreading through the quantum substrate of reality itself, touching every human mind in the galaxy. It would take several days to complete, several days, during which the humans would begin to forget piece by piece, memory by memory. Yuran watched the process through his sensors. He saw human scientists stop their research, confused about what they had been working on. He saw human pilots land their ships and forget how to fly them. He saw human children ask their parents about the strange dreams they were having, dreams of burning colonies and dying stars, and a rage that consumed everything. The parents could not answer. They were forgetting too. Within a week it was over. Every human who had ever traveled beyond Earth's atmosphere had lost those memories. Every record of humanity's time among the stars had been erased. Every ship, every technology, every artifact of their brief journey into the galaxy had been removed or destroyed. Humanity was alone again. Un felt the weight of what he had done pressing down on him like a physical force. He had saved the galaxy. He was certain of that, but he had also committed a crime that no punishment could ever balance. He had taken away the dreams of an entire species. He had stolen their future to protect his own. The other founders gathered to discuss what came next. The forgetting was complete, but their work was not finished. Someone had to watch humanity. Someone had to make sure they never remembered. I will do it, Oren said. Others looked at him with surprise. You. But your responsibilities, my responsibilities are here now. Oren's voice was tired but firm. I created this cage. I will maintain it. I will watch over humanity until they no longer need watching. That could take millions of years. Yes, Oren nodded slowly. It could, but it is my duty. I cannot ask others to guard the prison I built. The council accepted his decision. They established the Silent Keepers, a hidden order that would assist Orarun in his vigil. The Keepers would have only one purpose: to watch Earth, to monitor humanity, and to ensure that the great forgetting was never undone, Euron spent his remaining years building the systems that would outlast him. He created machines that could observe Earth without being detected. He established protocols for what to do if humans began to remember. He wrote warnings for future generations, explaining what humanity was and why they must never be allowed to reach the stars again. And then when everything was in place, he did something that surprised even himself. He chose to end his existence. It was not suicide, exactly. Founders did not die the way other beings died. They could choose to disperse their consciousness, to spread themselves across the universe until nothing remained but a faint echo of what they had been. It was a peaceful end, usually reserved for those who had lived long enough to grow tired of existence. Euron was not tired, he was ashamed. I cannot live with what I have done, he told the other founders before his dispersal. I have saved the galaxy, but I have destroyed my soul. Every day I see the humans on their little world living their little lives, not knowing what was taken from them, and every day I hate myself a little more. You did what was necessary, yes, and that is exactly why I cannot continue. Aun smiled sadly. Remember me not as a hero, but as a warning. This is what happens when fear guides our actions. This is the price of safety. He dispersed himself across the stars, his consciousness fading into the background radiation of the universe. The other founders mourned him, but they did not question his choice. They understood what Euron had done was necessary, but it was not forgivable. Not even by himself. The Silent Keepers continued their watch. Thousands of years passed. On Earth, humanity rebuilt itself from the ruins of the great forgetting. They did not remember the stars, but something in them still yearned for the sky. They built towers that reached toward the heavens. They wrote stories about gods who lived among the clouds. They looked up at night and wondered what secrets the darkness held. The keepers watched and worried. They are reaching again, one keeper reported. After 10,000 years, they have begun to understand the nature of the stars. They are building devices to study them. Let them study, the chief keeper replied. Study is not travel. As long as they remain on their world, they are safe. But the humans did not remain on their world. They could not. Something in their nature drove them upward, outward, always seeking what lay beyond the horizon. They invented telescopes and satellites and rockets. They sent probes into the void. They walked on their moon and looked back at the tiny blue marble. They called home, and they dreamed of going further. They will reach the barrier soon. The keepers warned the conquered. Their technology is advancing faster than we predicted. Within a few centuries, they will be capable of faster than light travel again. Then we must strengthen the barrier. We cannot. The barrier was designed to be invisible. If we make it stronger, they will detect it, and if they detect it, they will investigate, and if they investigate, they will ask questions. Questions that might lead to memories. The conquered faced a terrible choice. They could reveal themselves to humanity and try to explain what had been done, but that risked awakening the very memories they had tried to suppress. They could destroy humanity entirely, but that would make them no better than the Cathmari, or they could wait and hope that when humanity returned to the stars, they would be different from what they had been before. They chose to Wait, the keepers continued their vigil. They watched humanity grow and change. Over tens of thousands of years, they saw them make mistakes and learn from them. They saw them fight wars and then build peace. They saw them struggle with their own nature, always torn between the darkness and the light. They are not the same, one keeper noted after 50,000 years. They have built philosophies that teach them to control their anger. They have created religions that emphasize compassion and forgiveness. They have developed arts that allow them to process their grief without violence. But is it enough? The chief keeper asked. Are they truly different, or are they simply waiting for something to awaken what lies beneath? No one could answer that question. The last keeper to serve before Ambassador Keith Vaughn received her summons was a being named VTH. He had watched humanity for 12,000 years, studying their progress, reading their literature, listening to their music. He understood them better than any non-human had ever understood them. And he was afraid. They are beautiful, he wrote in his private journal. They have created things of such wonder and meaning that I sometimes weep when I experience them. Their capacity for love and joy and hope is greater than any species I have ever known. But beneath all that beauty, the old fire still burns. I see it in their eyes when they are threatened. I hear it in their voices when they speak of protecting their loved ones. It sleeps quietly most of the time, controlled by the philosophies and religions and social structures they have built, but it is always there. We slowed them, but we did not stop them. They are climbing back to the stars step by step, generation by generation. Soon they will cross the barrier. Soon they will meet us again. And when they do, we will face the question that the founders feared 80,000 years ago. What happens when humanity remembers? VTH closed his journal and looked at the screens that showed Earth spinning in the void. 8 billion humans lived on that little world. 8 billion minds that carried fragments of a forgotten past. 8 billion souls that held the potential for both incredible beauty and terrible destruction. He did not know what would happen when they remembered. He did not know if the galaxy would survive what came next, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty: the forgetting was ending. One way or another, humanity was coming home, and this time nothing would stop them. The probe was called Pioneer 7. It was not much to look at, a small metal cylinder packed with instruments and sensors, powered by an engine that could barely push it faster than light. The scientists who built it did not expect great things from it. They only wanted to test their new propulsion system to see if it actually worked. It worked better than they imagined. Pioneer 7 crossed the quantum barrier on a Tuesday afternoon, Earth time. The barrier had been designed to be invisible, to let light and radiation pass through while blocking any physical object. It had worked perfectly for 87,000 years, but the probe's engine was different from anything the founders had anticipated. It did not just push through space, it folded space around itself, slipping through gaps that should not have existed. The probe emerged on the other side of the barrier and continued its journey, completely unaware that it had just changed the history of the galaxy. The keepers detected it within minutes. Alarms that had been silent for longer than human civilization had existed began to sound. Emergency protocols activated. Messages were sent to every corner of the conquered. The impossible had happened, humanity had escaped. Ambassador Keith Vaughn received the news while she was already traveling to Earth. The keeper who had summoned her sent a simple update. The timeline has accelerated. They crossed the barrier 7 days ago. You must make contact immediately. Kev Vaughn pushed her ship to its maximum speed. She did not know what she would find when she reached Earth. She did not know if the humans were already remembering or if they were still innocent of their past. She only knew that she had to reach them before someone else did, someone who might not give them a chance to explain. She arrived at the edge of the human system. 3 days later, her ship's sensors showed her a civilization that had grown beyond anything the keepers had predicted. Satellites filled the space around Earth. Stations orbited the moon. Bases had been established on Mars. Humanity had been busy. They have rebuilt so quickly, Kevin whispered to herself. In 87,000 years, they have come so far. She guided her ship toward Earth using stealth systems to avoid detection. She needed time to observe, to understand what these new humans were like. She could not afford to make mistakes. What she saw surprised her. The humans of this era were different from the ones in the archived records. They argued and fought among themselves, yes, but they also cooperated in ways that the old humans had never managed. They had built networks that connected billions of minds. They had created organizations dedicated to peace and justice. They had sent aid to strangers on the other side of their world simply because those strangers needed help. And yet beneath all of that, Keth Van could see shadows of the old fire. She watched their entertainments, stories about war and revenge and the destruction of enemies. She read their histories, accounts of conflicts that had killed millions, of atrocities that defied imagination. She studied their politics, debates about how to protect themselves from threats, both real and imagined. They have not changed, she thought. At first they are still the same species that destroyed the Cathmary, but then she looked closer. She saw how their stories about war usually ended with lessons about peace. She saw how their histories emphasized the heroes who had stopped the violence, not the ones who had started it. She saw how their debates, for all their passion, usually ended in compromise rather than conflict. They were not the same. They were trying to be better. Keith Van made her decision. She would make contact. She chose a quiet location, a park on the outskirts of a medium-sized city. It was night, and few people were around. She landed her ship behind a cluster of trees and stepped out onto Earth's soil for the first time. The air was sweet and clean, filled with the scent of flowers and grass. The sky was dark except for the light of distant stars, stars that humanity had once traveled among, stars that they no longer remembered. A woman was walking through the park. She was middle-aged with tired eyes and a sad smile. She was talking to herself, or perhaps to someone who was not there. She did not notice Cathvan until the ambassador stepped into her path. The woman screamed. Please, Cavan said quickly, holding up her hands in a gesture she hoped was universal. I mean, you no harm. I have come to talk. Woman stared at her with wide eyes. Kevin knew what she looked like through human eyes, tall, silver-skinned, clearly not of Earth. She expected fear, perhaps hostility. What she got was wonder. You're real, the woman whispered. You're actually real. I knew it. I always knew there was something Out there, yes, Catherine said gently, I am. Real, my name is Keth. I have traveled very far to meet your people. Why? Now Kevin hesitated. She could not tell this woman the truth, not yet the truth. Was too dangerous, too complicated. She needed to understand these humans better before she revealed what had been done to them. I have been watching your world for some time, she said carefully. Your people have grown, you have reached out into space. We thought it was time to introduce ourselves. Woman laughed. It was a strange sound. Half joy, half terror. This is either the best day of my life or I'm having a complete breakdown. I hope it is the former. They talked for hours sitting on a bench beneath the alien stars. The woman's name was Maria, and she was a teacher, someone who helped young humans learn about their world and themselves. She asked hundreds of questions, and Keth Van answered as many as she could, without revealing the secrets of the past. As dawn approached, Keth made a request. I would like to meet more of your people. I would like to understand humanity better. Would you help me? Maria nodded slowly. I think I can do that, but you have to understand people are going to be scared. We've imagined meeting aliens for a long time, and in our stories, it usually doesn't go well for us. I know. Keith Van thought of the Keith Mari burning in the fires of human vengeance, but perhaps this time will be different. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Maria introduced Keth Van to officials, scientists, artists, and ordinary people. The news of first contact spread across Earth, causing reactions that ranged from celebration to panic, but Keth was careful, patient, always showing herself as a friend rather than a threat, and slowly humanity began to accept her. The cultural exchange began. Humans shared their music and art with Keth, and she shared examples from across the galaxy. The humans were fascinated by everything, the strange melodies of the Sarathi, the intricate paintings of the Venth, the philosophical poems of the founders. It was during one of these exchanges that the first sign of trouble appeared. A young musician was listening to a recording of ancient Sarathi music, a song that had been written 87,000 years ago, during the time when humanity first joined the galactic community. The melody was beautiful but sad, composed to honor the new friends that the Sirai had hoped to know for millions of years. As the music played, the young musician began to cry. What's wrong, Kevin? Asked concerned. I don't know, he said, his voice shaking. I don't know why I'm crying. It's just this song. It feels like I've heard it before. It feels like I've lost something, and this song is reminding me of what I lost, but I can't remember what it was. Keith Van felt a chill run through her silver blood. The forgetting was supposed to be complete. There should be no memories left to trigger, but the human mind was stronger than the founders had imagined. The dreams began that night. Across Earth, millions of people had the same dream. They saw stars, not the stars they knew, but different stars arranged in patterns they had never seen. They saw ships flying through the void. They saw cities on alien worlds, cities that felt like home, even though they had never been there, and they saw fire. Dreams showed burning colonies, screaming children, a rage so vast and terrible that it consumed everything in its path. The dreamers woke with tears on their faces and a feeling of loss that they could not explain. Scientists called it mass hysteria. The religious leaders called it a message from God. The artists called it Inspiration, but Keth Von knew what it really was. The memories were returning. She contacted the keepers immediately. The forgetting is failing, she reported. Humans across the planet are experiencing shared dreams. They are remembering things they should not be able to remember. This is what we feared, the keeper replied. The memory wipe was never meant to be permanent. It was designed to suppress, not destroy. Given enough time, enough stimulus, the old memories would eventually surface. What do I do? We do not know. This has never happened before. You must make a decision, Ambassador. You can try to complete the forgetting, to wipe their memories again and make them forget what they are beginning to remember, or you can let them remember and face whatever consequences follow. Kev Von thought about the choice she faced. She thought about the archived records she had seen, the joy of first contact, the horror of the KTH war, the terrible efficiency of human vengeance. She thought about the humans she had met over the past few weeks, their kindness, their curiosity, their desperate hope that the universe was not as cold and empty as they had feared. She made her decision. I will not wipe their memories again, she said. What was done to them 87,000 years ago was wrong. They deserve to know the truth. That is extremely dangerous. Ambassador, I know, but lying to them forever is also dangerous. If they discover the truth on their own without anyone to explain, they will feel betrayed. And if there is one thing I have learned about humans, it is that they do not react well to betrayal. She ended the communication and returned to Earth. The dreams were growing stronger. Humans everywhere were beginning to piece together the fragments of their lost history. They found patterns in the dreams, shared details that could not be explained by coincidence. They began to talk to each other, comparing experiences, building a picture of a past that had been stolen from them. Young general named Marcus Stone was one of the first to understand. Marcus had served in 3 wars. He had seen the best and worst of humanity. He had watched young soldiers die and old soldiers weep. He knew what humans were capable of, both good and evil. The dreams showed him something different. They showed him what humans had been capable of long ago when they walked among the stars. They showed him the burning colonies, the dying children, the rage that had consumed his ancestors. They showed him the war against the KTH, a war that had ended not in victory but in annihilation. He woke from the dream with a terrible understanding. They heard us, he whispered to the darkness of his bedroom. They made us forget, but we remember now. He got out of bed and walked to his window. The stars were shining in the night sky, the same stars that his ancestors had once traveled among. He looked at them with eyes that were no longer innocent, eyes that held both sorrow for what had been lost and anger for what had been taken. We remember, he said again, and we want answers. The next morning the world changed. Governments held emergency meetings. Scientists published papers about the shared dreams. Religious leaders called for calm. Protesters filled the streets demanding to know what was happening. And in a small conference room in Geneva, Keth Van faced a gathering of human leaders who no longer looked at her with wonder. They looked at her with suspicion. We need to know the truth, the secretary general said. Her name was Amara Akinquo, and she had the kind of calm strength that comes from years of navigating impossible situations. Our people are having dreams about things that never happened, dreams about wars we never fought, dreams about worlds we never visited, dreams about aliens that look very much like you. Kev Van took a deep breath. This was the moment she had known was coming. This was the moment when everything would change. The dreams are not imaginary, she said. They are memories. Your people once traveled among the stars. Secretary General, you were part of a galactic community. You built colonies on 100 worlds. And then what? Keith Van closed her eyes, and then something terrible happened, something that changed everything, and the galaxy made a choice to make you forget. The room exploded with questions and accusations. The human leaders demanded explanations, details, proof. Keith Van answered as best she could, revealing the truth of what had happened 87,000 years ago. The first contact, the Kethri genocide, humanity's terrible revenge, and the great forgetting that had followed. When she finished, the room was silent. You caged us, General Stone said at last. His voice was quiet, but there was something in it that made Keth Van's blood run cold. You stole our memories, you trapped us on our own world for 87,000 years, and you did it because you were afraid of us. Yes, Cathan admitted, we were afraid. We are still afraid. You should be. Stone leaned forward, his eyes burning with an intensity that reminded Kethvan of the archived recordings she had seen. We remember now. We remember what was done to us. We remember what we did in response, and we remember what we are capable of. Keith Van met his gaze without flinching. Then you also remember the price. You remember the billions who died, not just your people, but theirs as well. You remember that your vengeance did not bring your children back. You remember that destroying the KTH Mary did not heal your wounds. It made us safe, did it? You spent the next 87,000 years fighting wars among yourselves. You created weapons that could destroy your entire world. You came close to extinction more than once. Kevin shook her head. Violence did not make you safe, General. It never has. The Secretary General raised her hand for silence. Ambassador Kevin, I have a question. The galaxy made a choice to forget us, but now we are remembering. What will the galaxy do when they learn that we know the truth? It was the question Kevin had been dreading. I do not know, she admitted. Some will want to extend friendship. Some will want to complete the forgetting, and some, she paused, some will want to ensure that humanity never threatens the galaxy again. They will try to destroy us. They might try. General Stone laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Let them try. We beat the Cathmary in 18 months with technology we barely understood. Now we have had 87,000 years to develop. If they want a war, stop. Secretary General Okonkwo and LT Unkin GT's voice cut through the room like a knife. General, that is exactly the thinking that got us into this situation in the first place. We will not threaten war. We will not promise vengeance. We will. She paused, thinking. Everyone in the room held their breath. We will show them that we have changed, she said finally. We will show them that the humans of today are not the same as the humans of 87,000 years ago. We will answer their fear with patience. We will answer their suspicion with openness. We will prove that we have learned from our past, and If they attack us anyway, Stone asked. The Secretary General's eyes hardened. Then we will defend ourselves, but we will not strike first, we will not seek revenge, we will be better than our ancestors were, not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to choose a different path. The room was silent for a long moment, then slowly the other leaders began to nod. Humanity had made its choice. Now it was time to see if the galaxy would give them a chance to prove it. The great chamber of the conquered council had not been this full in 10,000 years. Representatives from all 12 species had gathered, filling seats that had been empty for longer than most civilizations had existed. The air was thick with tension and fear. Everyone knew why they were here. Humanity had remembered. This is a disaster, the representative from the Cregemony declared. His voice echoed through the chamber, sharp and angry. We should have destroyed them when we had the chance. Now it is too late. They know what we did. They will never forgive us. Forgive us. The Venth ambassador shook her head. We did nothing wrong. We protected the galaxy from a species that committed genocide. We committed a different kind of genocide. We murdered their past. We stole their future. We caged them on their own world for 87,000 years. Do you really think they will see us as heroes? Then what do you suggest? Should we finish what we started? Should we destroy them now before they can retaliate? The chamber erupted in argument. Some called for immediate military action, others counseled patience. A few suggested fleeing the galaxy entirely, finding new homes far from human reach. Through it all, Keth stood silent at her station, watching the chaos unfold. She had seen fear before in many forms, but she had never seen fear like this, the kind that made ancient species behave like frightened children, squabbling and screaming, while the thing they feared drew closer. A message arrived on her private channel. It was from the Keeper who watched over Earth. A human ship has left their system. The message read, "It is heading toward Omnith Prime. They want to talk." Kevin shared the message with the council. The argument stopped. Every eye turned toward her. They are coming here, the Krellin representative demanded. Yes, this is a trick. They want to get close enough to strike. I do not think so. Kevin kept her voice calm. I have spent time among them. I have seen how they think. If they wanted war, they would not send a single ship. They would send a fleet. Then what do they want? I believe they want what they say. To talk. The council debated for hours, but there was nothing to debate. The human ship was coming. Whether they wanted it to or not, they could attack it and start the war they feared, or they could let it arrive and discover what humanity had to say. In the end, they chose to listen. The human ship arrived 3 days later. It was small, barely larger than a shuttle, and it carried only 4 passengers. Keth watched it land on the platform outside the great chamber, feeling a strange mix of hope and dread. The humans who emerged were not what she expected. There was an older woman with silver hair and calm eyes, a young man with the careful movements of a soldier, a scientist whose gaze darted everywhere, taking in every detail, and a child or girl no more than 10 years old, holding a small device that played soft music. They were escorted into the chamber by guards from 7 different species. Every weapon in the building was aimed at them. Every sensor tracked their movements. The council members watched from their elevated seats, ready to give the order that would end human existence. Forever, the older woman stepped forward. She was not afraid. Kevin could see it in the way she stood, the way she looked at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. This was a woman who had faced worse things than alien councils. "My name is Sarah Chen," she said. Her voice was clear and strong, carrying to every corner of the chamber without effort. "I am here to speak on behalf of humanity. You are here to answer for your crimes." The Krellin representative spat. "Your species committed genocide. You destroyed an entire people." "Yes, sir," said simply. "We did." The council stirred. They had expected denial, justification, excuses. They had not expected admission. 87,000 years ago, our ancestors killed every member of the Kathmari species. Sarah continued. "We remember now. We remember the rage that drove them. We remember the grief that consumed them. We remember the choice they made to answer death with death, pain with pain, until there was nothing left to hurt. Then you understand why we feared you, why we had to." "We understand," Sir nodded. "We understand perfectly. You looked at what our ancestors did, and you saw monsters. You saw a species without limits, without conscience, without the wisdom to know when to stop, and you were right to be afraid." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But you made a mistake. You thought that what our ancestors became was what humanity truly is. You thought that the monster you saw was our final form, our ultimate nature. So you caged us. You wiped our memories. You gave us 87,000 years of darkness, hoping that we would stay broken forever. It was for the good of the galaxy. It was for your safety," Sarah corrected gently. "And I understand that too. You did what you thought was necessary. You were trying to protect the innocent billions who might die if humanity ever went to war again. It was a terrible choice, but it was made from fear, not malice." The Vinth ambassador spoke up. "Then why are you here? If you understand our reasons, if you accept what was done, what do you want from us?" Sarah smiled. It was a strange smile, sad and peaceful at the same time. "We came to tell you that you were wrong." The council stirred again. Weapons powered up. Guards stepped forward. Sir raised her hand, unafraid. "Not wrong to fear us," she clarified. "Wrong about what we would become. You thought that if humanity remembered our past, we would seek revenge. You thought we would burn the galaxy the way we burned the Keithmary. You thought the monster would wake up, and hasn't it?" Sarah turned to look at the little girl standing behind her. The child was still playing her music, a soft, gentle melody that seemed out of place in this chamber, full of fear and weapons. "This is my granddaughter," Sarah said. "Her name is Hope. She was born 3 years ago on Earth. She has never known war. She has never felt the kind of grief that drove our ancestors to destroy the Kathmari. She is the future of humanity, not the past." "A child proves nothing," the Krellin representative sneered. "Your ancestors had children too. They loved them, protected them, mourned them when they died, and then they became monsters." "Yes, they did." Sarah's voice was patient. "Because they did not know any other way. When they were hurt, they hurt back. When they were wounded, they became the wound. That was their nature, or so they believed." She walked forward toward the center of the chamber. The guards tensed, but did not move. "But our ancestors were wrong. Violence was not their nature. It was their choice, a choice they made because they did not believe they had any other option. They thought that the only way to protect themselves was to destroy their enemies completely. They thought that mercy was weakness and compassion was suicide, and you disagree. We know better now. Sarah stopped in the center of the chamber, surrounded by beings who had the power to end her species with a single command. We have had 87,000 years to think about who we want to be. We have built philosophies and religions and entire civilizations based on the idea that violence is not the only answer. We have learned to transform our pain into art, our grief into growth, our rage into resolve. Pretty words, the Krell representative said, but words are easy. Your ancestors made promises too before they showed their true nature. You're right, Sarah nodded. Words are easy. That is why we did not come here with words alone. She gestured to the young soldier standing behind her. He stepped forward and held up a small device. This contains our history, Sarah explained. Everything humanity has done since the Great Forgetting, every war we have fought against each other, not against you, every treaty we have signed, every time we stood at the edge of destruction and chose to step back, every moment when we could have become the monsters you fear and decided not to. She paused, her eyes moving across the assembled council members. We have not been perfect. We have made terrible mistakes. We have hurt each other in ways that would horrify you, but we have also learned. We have grown. We have become something our ancestors never imagined. A species that knows what it is capable of and chooses to be better. The device activated. Images filled the chamber. Human history unfolding in rapid sequence. Wars and atrocities, yes, but also treaties and reconciliations. Crimes and justice, destruction and rebuilding. A species struggling, always struggling to be worthy of its potential. The council watched in silence. When the display ended, Sierra spoke again. We remember what our ancestors did to the KTH Mary. We remember the rage that consumed them. And yes, that rage still lives inside us. It is part of what we are. We cannot remove it any more than you could remove your own survival instincts. Then you admit you are still dangerous. We admit that we are human. Sarah's voice was firm. We are capable of incredible violence. We are capable of destroying anyone who threatens us, any species that hurts our children. That capacity has not changed in 87,000 years. It will not change in the next 87,000. It is written into our blood, our bones, our deepest selves. Then how can you ask us to trust you? Sarah smiled again, and this time there was something fierce beneath the sadness, something that reminded Kethvon of the archived recordings she had seen of the humans who had burned a species from existence. We are not asking you to trust us. We are telling you what we have chosen. We have chosen not to seek revenge for what you did. We have chosen not to punish you for the 87,000 years of darkness. We have chosen to come here in peace with a single ship and 4 people when we could have come with a fleet and a war cry. She stepped closer to the council. Zita, her voice dropping but still carrying to every corner of the chamber. We are still angry. We will always be angry. You stole our past, our future, our very memories of who we were. That wound will never fully heal, but we have learned something that our ancestors never understood. What? That being angry does not mean we have to destroy. That being capable of violence does not mean We have to use it, that the fire inside us can warm as easily as it burns if we choose to control it rather than letting it control us. The council chamber was silent. Every being present was trying to understand what they were hearing. Species that admitted its own capacity for destruction, that acknowledged its own rage, and yet claimed to have chosen a different path. Kevon stepped forward. She had stayed silent throughout, sir, but now she felt compelled to speak. Ambassador Chen, she said, using the formal title for the first time, you say that humanity has changed. You say that you have learned to control your nature. But how can we be certain? How can we know that the next time you are hurt, you will not become what you were before? Sarah turned to face her. Their eyes met, silver and brown, alien and human, two beings standing at the crossroads of history. You cannot be certain, Sarah admitted. There are no guarantees. If someone attacks our children tomorrow, if someone makes us watch our people die the way the Cathmarie did, I cannot promise that we would not respond with the same terrible rage. The council stirred, but Sarah held up her hand. But I can tell you this. We know now. We know what that rage costs. We know that destroying an entire species did not bring back our dead. We know that vengeance did not heal our grief. We know that becoming monsters only created more suffering for us and for everyone else. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings from a dozen different species. We have spent 87,000 years learning how to be wounded without becoming the wound. We have built an entire civilization on the principle that there is always another choice, always another path. We may not always succeed. We may sometimes fail, but we will always try. And what do you want from us? The Venth ambassador asked. Her voice was softer, now thoughtful. We want a second chance. Sarah's voice was simple and honest. We want to rejoin the galactic community. We want to share what we have learned about grief, about rage, about the long, hard work of transforming pain into something better. And we want to learn from you, too. We want to know the history that was taken from us. We want to understand who we were so that we can better understand who we are. You ask a great deal. We offer a great deal in return. Sarah smiled. We are not the same species that destroyed the Cathmarie. But we are also not weak. We have rebuilt our civilization from nothing. We have developed technologies that surprise your scientists. We have created art and philosophy and culture that might enrich your worlds as much as yours have enriched ours. She spread her hands, a gesture of openness. We could be your enemies. We could spend the next million years at war, destroying each other until nothing remains. Or we could be something else. We could be partners. We could be friends. We could show the galaxy that even the darkest past does not have to determine the future. The council deliberated for 3 days. There were arguments and accusations, fears and doubts. Some species wanted to reject humanity forever. Others wanted to embrace them immediately. Most felt somewhere in between, uncertain what to make of a species that admitted its own capacity for destruction while claiming to have transcended it. In the end, they reached a decision. Humanity would be given a chance, a probationary period of 1,000 years during which they would be monitored and evaluated. If they proved themselves, if they truly had changed, they would be welcomed into the Concord as full members. When Sir Chen received the news, she smiled. 1,000 years, she said. That is nothing. We have already waited 87,000. The human delegation prepared to leave. Their mission was complete, at least for now. The work of proving humanity worthy would take generations. As Sir walked toward her ship, Keth caught up with her. Ambassador Chen, the Siri said, "May I ask you something personal?" Sir stopped and turned. "Of course." You spoke of rage, of anger that will never fade, of the wound that was inflicted on your people. Kevon hesitated. "Are you not angry at me, at my species? We were the ones who first met humanity. We could have protected you. We could have stopped the Cathmary before they hurt your people, and instead we supported the decision to cage you." Sarah was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. "Yes, I am angry. I am angry every day when I think about what was taken from us, the stars, the colonies, the children who grew old, never knowing what they might have been. The anger rises up inside me like a fire." "Then how do you stand here speaking to me as a friend?" Sarah reached out and touched Kath Vaughn's arm. The contact was light, almost tender. "Because being angry does not mean I have to hurt you, because punishing you would not undo the past, because the only way forward is through understanding, not vengeance." She smiled, and for just a moment Keth saw something flicker in her eyes, something ancient and powerful and terrifying. The rage was there. It had always been there. It would always be there, but beneath the rage, there was something else, something stronger. "Choice, we are always angry," Sarah said softly. "We just learned what to do with it." She turned and walked toward her ship, her granddaughter's hand in hers. The child was still playing her music, the same gentle melody that had filled the council chamber. It was a human song. Kevin realized, a lullaby, something humans sang to their children to help them sleep. The ship lifted off and disappeared into the stars. Kevin stood alone on the landing platform, watching the sky. Long after the humans were gone, she thought about everything she had learned in the past weeks about humanity's past, their present, and their possible future. The founders had hidden humanity to protect the galaxy from monsters. They had never imagined that in the darkness humanity would learn to become something far more dangerous than monsters. They had become good people who remembered how to be monsters and chose not to be. It was, Keth thought, the most terrifying and beautiful thing she had ever witnessed. The stars burned on in the eternal darkness, and somewhere among them, small blue world was waking up, ready to reclaim its place in the universe, not as conquerors, not as destroyers, as something new, something better, something that the galaxy had never seen before. Humanity had come home, and this time they were staying.